Giant! Giant!
I'm just gonna wear the same thing I was wearing before, but it's still inside out. I wear it inside out. This is how you keep the men away at the mics. You just wear lots of layers.
With the law of attraction and stuff, you have to articulate things for them to come into existence.
Bye, dog, I love you. Be a good boy, please.
What else do I need? I'll bring that joint. Dear Lord. When I said I wanted to work with Louis or Dave Chappelle, I should have been more specific. Bye, everybody. Bye. As opposed to, like, how it all panned out. See ya.
Not only do they talk about you being the undisputed king of comedy, and people love this show, there are these, I mean, yours is deeper and broader. Comparisons to Lenny Bruce, comparisons to Bob Dylan, comparisons to being a sort of philosopher king.
Jesus.
Do you want to not talk about that because it should be... Where does it come from, and how do you see what you are?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just a comedian.
Women still go out with guys when you consider the fact that there is no greater threat to women than men. We're the #1 threat to women. Globally and historically, we're the #1 cause of injury and mayhem to women. We're the worst thing that ever happens to them.
Like, I think about flashers and how well they dressed, though. You know, like in my day, you dressed up to go on an airplane and you dressed up to show a woman your dick. And I appreciate that. Because when Louis C.K. tried to show me his dick, he was just wearing a shitty black t-shirt and jeans. And it's like, listen, you schlub, you can't do a little outfit for me if you're gonna, you know?
My own personal feeling about him, he's a top 1% insightful person. And he's able to make that funny. And almost nobody else can do that. And that's kind of definition of genius, right? So you're top 1% ability at something that no one else can do. If you can do something that no one else can do, that almost alone makes you kind of a genius, even if it's something stupid.
Children who have nut allergies need to be protected. Of course. We have to segregate their food from nuts, have their medication available at all times, and anybody who manufactures or serves food needs to be aware of deadly nut allergies. Of course. But maybe if touching a nut kills you, you're supposed to die.
I thought of him as like a misanthrope who loved people. He saw the very, very worst, like least attractive parts of people, of humanity, of the human condition, and then found a way to be sympathetic to those parts of us.
There's one kid in my daughter's class who I hate so much. And it's really fucked up because I'm 44 and I hate a 6-year-old.
His comedy was so good at what it really meant to open out your nasty, broken, dark heart in front of thousands of people, hundreds of people every night.
I don't stop eating when I'm full. The meal is not over when I'm full. The meal is over when I hate myself. That's when I stop.
He seemed to be brutally honest about himself and about his relationship with his kids in a way that we weren't used to seeing from comedians.
I like Mama's better because she makes good food. And I love her more, so I like being there more.
All right, go get your PJs. Okay, baby.
The heart of Louis' act was, I'm fucked up. And in my fuck-uppedness, in my navigating through the world, I'm trying to do the right thing. I don't always succeed, but I'm trying to be a good guy.
You know, it's really sad about men that we can't have a beautiful thought about a woman that isn't followed by a disgusting thought about that same woman. We're not capable of it. That's how our brains work. She's an angel, and I want her to drown in my cum.
He would talk about how men are these creatures that have these irrepressible impulses that are clearly unpleasant for women to deal with.
Oh, yeah. What the fuck is wrong with me? God damn it.
And just being self-aware in a way that, you know, to female fans such as myself was very endearing. He created a show that was really like the beating center of the zeitgeist. When Louis garners critical acclaim, that is really what catapulted Louis C.K. from just a funny guy to a guy who got the full genius treatment from our culture.
Listen, I'm
What? No.
just...
No.
Come on.
He did a lot of material that was borderline,
God, you can't even rape well.
but he did it from this persona of, I understand that these things are wrong.
Rick, does it offend you when I say that word?
What word? Hello?
No, faggot.
Yeah, does it bother you when he says the word faggot?
No, it bothers me when you say it, because you mean it.
But he became this kind of like unlikely moral conscience of the comedy world.
A lot of Louis fans felt like we know a lot about Louis. We know like what makes his brain tick. We know the kinds of things he thinks about. We know what pisses him off. For as disgusting as he painted himself to be, we felt like we understood his heart.
For those of you tuning in to see my interview with Louis C.K. tonight, I have some bad news. Then I have some really bad news.
Breaking tonight, 5 women are accusing comedian Louis C.K. of sexual misconduct in a bombshell report from the New York Times.
The women say that the comedian would make sexually inappropriate comments. Some say he also masturbated in front of them.
3 more women report similar incidents, one in the 1990s, one in 2003, and one in 2005.
Some of the women say they feared career repercussions if they spoke out.
News this morning about the comedian Louis C.K., who has come out to say that the accusations against him are in fact true.
FX cutting all ties, HBO and Netflix also dropping him from upcoming projects. The release of his new film, I Love You, Daddy, abruptly canceled.
He was set to appear on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, but was replaced.
When reached for comment, Jesus said, I don't want to hear about it, I was a big fan.
I need to, while you're here, ask you for your comment on something quickly.
Yes,
Your good friend and colleague, Louis C.K.
Yes.
What was the impact on you when you heard not only the accusations, but his admission?
Stunned, I think. You know, you give your friends a benefit of the doubt. I tried to think of it in terms of, you know, I've had friends who have compulsions and who have done things, gambling or drinking or drugs, and we've lost some of them. Some of them have died, and you always find yourself back to a moment of, did I miss something? Could I have done more? Are the thing. And in this situation, I think we all could have.
It's a real mind fuck, you know, because I love Louis, but Louis did these things. Both of those statements are true. So I just keep asking myself, can you love someone who did bad things? Can you still love them? I can mull that over later, certainly, because the only people that matter right now are the victims. They are victims, and they're victims because of something he did.
The Louis thing came out at the worst possible time, you know, which is right after the Harvey Weinstein thing and Bill Cosby. I mean, this was a real wake-up call to a lot of America about how awful men in power could be. So he got swept into that.
I was gross. What he did, I think, was just gross.
It was gross if he did it to a man. It takes on more ominous tones when he's doing it to women.
Completely agree.
Yeah. I mean, I don't
But
think
it's not a
anything
crime,
like,
right?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just sad. It's nothing like Cosby. It's just pathetic.
Somebody would walk in, and I would say, somebody well-known, I was like, what do you think about Louis? And they would say, what do you think about Louis?
He didn't assault anybody. He asked for permission. I don't know. I still think he should be allowed to perform at the cellar.
Because what did he do wrong? Ask for consent
for non-contact? And like, what are you talking about?
When he came out and he said, I did this. He said, I did these things. These women are all telling the truth. And I just remember thinking, well, that's the sign of somebody who, well, we can work with that. You know what I mean? Like, that's, you know, what the hell else are you supposed to do?
Every comedian has their skeletons. Every comedian has the shit in their closet that they don't want to come out, I'm sure, you know? And not just comedians, everybody. But I felt like there's just a lot of hypocrisy around it because so many of us spend our careers trying to sort of hold the light up and be like, hey, I'm telling the truth here. I'm the truth teller, you know? But when it comes to telling the truth about one of our own, suddenly we shut up.
Zero to 40 was fun. You were born, you don't even know where you are. Yeah, you had your first kiss, not right away, but I'm just saying you had your first kiss during those years. You had some masturbation, you had some sex, you had some drinking, you had some driving. Nothing good happens between 40 and 80. I understand what's going to happen. First, I'm gonna get that cougar chest with the freckles, and then I'm gonna die. That's what's gonna happen.
When I have younger people ask me, how did you get where you are? And I tell them how long it took, they're like, oh, I don't want that. Like, I want to, 30, what do you mean you were 35 before you got your first job? When did you start? When was 21? Yeah, no, I can't do that, I was 21 or 22 out of college in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I met this guy, Eugene Merman, and he said, I run this open mic. I think you're funny. Do you want to do it? And he didn't know me from anything. He just thought I was a funny person. And I just told a story that was very raw and vulnerable for me about when I lost my virginity. But it broke the seal of, I think this is how I want to do things. Then I moved to New York and got temp jobs and did stand-up at night. My boyfriend at the time was like, oh, I really love this comedian, Louis C.K., let's go see him. He used to have a totally different act than he did now. It was like very absurdist, and I was like, that's fine, whatever. It wasn't like my favorite comic.
Hey, mind if I get a quick interview?
I don't really feel like it.
Just take a second.
We both were on this cartoon show called Home Movies, and the studios are in Massachusetts, and we're both on the same flight to Boston so we can go do this voiceover. We're sitting next to each other, and I think we are in first class, or maybe just planes back then was more comfortable, but he was drinking coffee, and he was drinking orange juice, and his newspaper, and he was just ignoring me, which is fine. But I remember thinking, of course he's not talking to me, because I'm just like a dumb kid, open micer, and we both happen to be on this show. And when we got off the plane, he said, I'm renting a car, do you want to ride? So we're talking in the car, and he's driving me through, I think we sort of went through the town he grew up in, or near it, and he very vaguely started doing a tour of like his sexual thoughts. Like, that girl in that house had big tits, she had red hair, I was in love with her. I used to masturbate and think about it, like stuff like that. Am I scared? No, I would be now, but I didn't know about that stuff back then. And I just remember thinking, and it was the same thought I had when I auditioned for college and the dean of acting asked me to do the monologue again, except do it this time like you've just been raped. And I didn't know what that meant. I've never been raped. And then I remember thinking, you naive child, this is the theater. This is how they talk. So I had the same thoughts as Louis, like, hey, I jerked off to this and this girl's tits and whatever. I'm like, guess this is how comedians talk. And it is, by the way. But I think that's what people get confused by when you tell them a story of sexual harassment, like that you were so sure what was happening and you were laser focused and taking notes because 25 years later, you're gonna talk about it. I just thought, like, whatever feelings I have about this that didn't even get to come up all the way, I'm wrong. Later in life, we're all living in LA, it's like 2003, 2004. There was just this one night that I remember. We're all in the same kind of shows together. Louis like becoming Louis, like doing his like honest confessional stuff. He's not doing the absurd stuff anymore. He's talking about his wife and my daughter's a cunt, all that stuff that seemed really edgy and funny. And he's like, we're all going to the bar. And I thought, oh, well, he never joins us, but okay. And he's like, I'd love to talk to you about your act or something like that.
We go around the corner, and the bar we go into has a bar level, and then there's stairs, and you can sit up in this like groovy lounge and sit on floor pillows. We get up there, and we're kind of like in this corner where if you are in the downstairs part of the bar, you can't see what we're doing up there. And so we just kept talking, and basically all that I remember is he said something about, what if a guy asked you if he could jerk off in front of you? Would you oppose that? And so many thoughts were going through my head, none of which were, he's asking me if he can pull his dick out and jerk off. One of them was, oh, he's doing a bit and he's running it by me. And he's asking me what I would think of a loser who would pull his dick out or ask a woman if he could pull his dick out in front of her. I remember like riffing with him about this absolute loser persona he was adapting in order to tell this joke. What was the punchline going to be? Maybe we would work it out together. I was so oblivious that he was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you know, and I was like, what? And he's like, what did you think this was? Or what did you think I was asking? Something in that vibe. He basically said something along the lines of like, what? Like, I like to jerk off in front of people. And I was like, you mean you would have done it like here? Like in public? And a friend of mine came over at that moment and interrupted, thank God. And Louis took out a picture, again, pre-phone cameras, and just was like, I was just showing Jen a picture of my daughter. And that's when I was just like, ew, 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 because he wasn't. So that was it. And again, I wasn't like in a shower after crying like a Lifetime movie. I was just like, what the fuck was that? I knew from then on I didn't like him, and I didn't want to be around him. But it's just tough because you see like everyone you like and know hanging out with a dude. And then it like didn't dawn on me at the time to ask my guy friends, like, why are you friends with him? Like, isn't that weird to know that he lives this double life and you just kind of let it happen? And I started to adopt the attitude of like, for a while, I was like, yeah, it's totally cool that he does it. Because then I started hearing more stories. Oh, he does this to everyone. I'm like, he is such a weirdo. Like, I just was like, I guess it's cool to act like that. I mean, I was too old to think that way, but I did. There was another time when he got off stage, same club, same thing. It was like really becoming him. And he like came off stage and like, I'm not saying this to imply there was any physical abuse, but he just sort of like put his hand on the back of my neck and was like, I'm gonna fuck you someday, something like that. I am not saying he meant rape. I think he meant we're gonna fuck someday, you know, like consensual. I just remember kind of looking around and like no one heard that, you know, and I was like, that's so weird. I went on a date and I didn't know this guy very well, and I sneezed. And I sneezed so hard that it shook my entire body, and I shit my pants. And then a few years later, I was on one of my opening act gigs in Florida. In order to be a headlining act, you have to work the road and be an opening act for a long time. And I got an email from him, and again, I was just using the hotel computer. And he said, I see on your website that you're in West Palm Beach, Florida. He's like, I have a gig in Miami next week. If you just stayed in Florida, you know, you could open for me in Miami and just come down to Miami. And I just was really poor and had no money, and I couldn't have afforded a hotel for 5 days. And I would love to be his opening act. I'd love to get that experience of being in front of these bigger crowds that is probably gonna be full. But he said, P.S. I'm divorced now, or getting divorced. And I went, oh, I'm not gonna do it, because he probably wants someone that might like fool around with him or sleep with him on the road. And that was like the first time with him that like an instinct kicked in, and I wasn't like, oh my God, isn't it? I like kind of was like, this isn't good. You don't know how it affects you because it's so weird and small that you don't know something's weird because you've been socialized in this world where men get to treat women however they want.
Guys, give it up for Jen Kirkman. Let her hear it.
I don't have to be traumatized by what Louis did, but I was bothered by it. I was disturbed. As the years went on and I had more of a sense of self, I went, oh my God, that is so fucked up. And this whole culture of people that think it's normal, they're fucked up. But that was really it. That was the big ending to my story until I talked about it.
You guys are awesome. Have a good night. Jen Kirkman.
So I got a call from my agent before this, and has some pretty bad news. Turns out I've aged out of both being able to play Mark Maron's girlfriend on an episode of Maron and getting jerked off in front of by Louis C.K. That's a joke. I don't have an agent. I knew about the Louis stuff because it was just basically an open secret in the comedy community. But also one of those sort of like open secrets where sometimes I would hear, well, he did it to this person, he did it to this person. One time I heard he did it to men, and I was like, that's interesting. That ended up being just a rumor. But I had just heard about this habitual behavior that had been happening for a series of years, and not just to randos, I mean to other comedians. And also, I mean, I'm a fucking amateur. I'm a fucking scrub. If I know about this shit, everybody knows about this shit.
Someone's like, oh, he did it to these two girls. They did this comedy festival together in Aspen, this comedy duo. I was like, well, were they upset? What was the thing? The telephone game that was played was, oh, no, it was a party, and there was like a bunch of people in the room, and everyone was doing their thing. Some people were drinking beer, some people were smoking pot. He was jerking off in the corner, like you do at a party. You know, everyone's got their own thing.
I would say an open secret is the sort of thing in which people love engaging in discussion about it, love being horrified by it, but it's like, at the end of the day, my hands are tied.
Ma'am, as I've told you several times already, this is a police matter.
Well, it doesn't seem to matter to the police.
We had him on the show because whenever you have a big, juicy guest spot, and this was a love interest for the main character, there's always like, well, get the biggest star you can. And we took a different approach, which was like, let's just get the funniest person. Like, who cares? It was the beginning of the second season, and the show was like teetering on the brink. I don't think he's the reason that we stuck around and survived, but he's one of them. And then at some point, and I don't remember when or how or who told me, but I started hearing a story of him in a hotel room or something. It was vague, and it was sort of like, it was confusing. There weren't a lot of details, but I heard it then a bunch of times, like from different people. Like if his name came up, that was a thing that people said. And then we, many years later, had this idea of having him come back for an episode.
Hey, Leslie.
Dave.
Hey.
Oh my God. Wow.
I kind of didn't do anything about it. We just kind of had him back, and I pretended like I didn't know. My attitude when I look back on it was, well, that's not my problem. Like, I didn't do that, and that's something that happened somewhere else, and I don't know the details, and I don't even know if it's true or not, and so it's not my problem.
2012, there's the Gawker blind item that said this famous comedian masturbated in front of people. Most people were assuming it's Louis. I would hear, this comedian knows who the women are. This comedian confirms it's true. But most people don't read blind items, and it didn't break his assent. He was just sort of like, a blind item happened.
You're exploding in a way that is, you're now like an internet pioneer. You've got the show, but then you've found a way to circumvent Ticketmaster. You figured out a way that people don't have to pay taxes on toiletries. Like, you've somehow...
Louis C.K., he's an elite comedian. And he's been an elite comedian for 15 years. These stories have been around for a while. Everybody knows. And everybody kind of casually knows, really. It's obviously, this jerking off comedian is obviously Louis C.K.
One time I was jerking off, this is another aging thing. I was jerking off and I looked at my penis and it was blurry because my eyes are going, so I can't. Because you're supposed to get reading glasses when this becomes blurry, and that's the precise fixed length.
In 2015, Gawker then elaborated with another report from an anonymous tipster who reported that he had emailed Louis C.K.'s website to say, it's messed up that you're doing this, you shouldn't, and then Louis C.K. called this person directly. The way I rationalized it, I was always like, well, they're not allegations with a name on them. It's kind of remarkable how close to the surface all this was brewing, and the cognitive dissonance it created with fans and critics and journalists, including, frankly, myself, who were aware of this on some level at the same time that we were evaluating and enjoying his work.
I Seem Fun, The Diary of Jen Kirkman, episode 90, coming to you from Melbourne, Australia, in a hotel room on an iPhone.
I had a podcast at the time, every week, for my diehard fans, where I just talked about what it was like touring. I was doing this Melbourne Comedy Festival in Australia, but I'm doing all these interviews. You do press all day long.
Just confirming for our audience, when they come along and see you, they won't get any sex stories or any swearing in the show.
Oh, there's some sex stories. My act had very mild jokes about my first time having sex after being divorced. I had sex with a younger man. I was like 39 or 38, and he was like 25. I regret it now, but I exaggerated.
I was 37 when I got divorced. I went on a date with a 20-year-old. I thought I'm gonna be a cougar. Seems to be in style. He was not legal to get into any bars, so I took him back to my place. I served him wine out of the glasses I got for my wedding. I knew I would use those someday.
And all the reviews came out, and people were calling my show dirty in a derogatory way. I was like, wait, I'm A, not even dirty, but B, so what if I was? I know a ton of guys that are way dirtier than me, and they're like getting lauded for it. So here I am in my little hotel room with my podcast that maybe 1,000 people listen to a week. You know, that's not a lot of people. Was like, I'll tell you what it's like being a woman in comedy, and that was the episode.
I am so sick of being told I can't talk about my age. I am so sick of being told everything that I can't do. Well, you should see the way some of these men behave, not on camera, not on stage. That is so appalling to me. The fact that my art gets reviews that paint me as this nasty whore is really angers me.
If the problem with my act is you think it means something about me, well, you're wrong, it doesn't. I'm not actually a problematic person who's sexually harassing people. If that is the problem, then you need to take these pervert guys to task because they're actually doing it in real life, and their act is kind of a cover for it, or they're telling us who they are, but you're not listening.
I have this friend, his daughter's 15. He's like, she's gonna start having sex. I don't know what to do. What if she has a bad sexual experience? Oh, she's gonna have a number of those. Oh, yes, she is. Her whole life is gonna be just walking through a blizzard of bad dicks, just... Ow. Dicks. Just... Jesus. That was a big one. Holy fuck, I'm just trying to get to work.
A very famous comic. He is probably at Cosby level at this point. He is lauded as a genius. He is basically a French filmmaker at this point. You know, new material every year. He's a known perv. And there's a lockdown on talking about him. And this guy didn't rape me, but he made a certain difficult decision to go on tour with him really hard, because I knew if I did, I would get more of the same weird treatment I'd been getting from him, and it was really fucked up.
What it's like to be a woman in comedy, you hear these comments, you get offered dicks. That's it. And so this blog put a picture of me and a picture of Louis, said something to the effect, did Jen Kirkman call out Louis C.K. on our podcast? That was the first day of like the end of my life. Like it just snowballed after that. And so then I took it down. Articles were coming out. What's Jen Kirkman talking about? It was a lonely, lonely bad time. Louis at one point was like, email me, like call me. And I was like, I knew what it was about. And I was like, no, we have to have this discussion over email. And he's like, look, I know what I did to you. And he named all the things. I said, do you want to make a joint statement with me then? Like, that would really help. If you could just be like, Jen and I talked. Yes, I did say these things. She's cool. And I never did this to anyone else. He's like, I can't. And I didn't see that as a red flag. He's like, I've just learned to handle this stuff. This is your first time going through it. But like, you don't talk to the media ever. And like, I have daughters. And I was like, you're right, your daughter's like, no, totally right. He's like, just let this go and it'll go away. Every year I had something good happening. Then I had another special, I had another book, I had another tour. And every single press was like, if she doesn't talk about Louis, we're not interested. So I ended up not doing a lot of press for any of those things because they only want to talk about Louis. I have a lot of regrets about the way I handled things, but it was something I went through that I was not prepared for. Like thrown into a war with no battle training. Nobody was fighting for me. Nobody was like, leave her alone. Nobody was like, okay, you know what? I have to fucking say something, guys. I'm a successful man in comedy. This shit's true. Even some women comics were like, that's just Louis. He does that. It's funny. So I just, you know, at one point I just lied and said, Louis never did anything to me. All the stories are made up. I didn't know what else to do. I needed it to stop.
We're in my home. sadly. This is my, wall of effects. We got my Woodman painting that I got at the 6th Street Goodwill. I enjoy the size of the clarinet relative to the rest of his body. Here's a knife my friend Sarah found in a bush. That goes there. This like whole apartment's got big that goes there energy, you know what I mean? Where it's like you put something and then 3 years later it's still there. It's incredibly dispiriting to see like the retention rate of female comedians. Most female comedians quit because it's just a series of indignities that they have to suffer their entire life to get less than 50% of what men get. Just for Laughs quite possibly is the biggest comedy festival in the world. They contacted me. They were looking for somebody to write about the festival. I knew someone who was an editor at Gawker. I asked them if that would be fine if I went there on their behalf. I knew that I wanted to write about the Louis stuff because I had seen people ignore it. I knew everybody else knew about it. And the fact that he was the biggest motherfucker in the game at the time, people were unwilling to do anything to shame him publicly for what he had been doing for like 20 years at that fucking point. Around the time that I went there, the Bill Cosby thing, basically it was undeniable that he had committed miscellaneous sex crimes. And so I thought that I would just ask people that were going down the red carpet, how do you feel about the Cosby accusations? And they would say, well, I don't think they're accusations at this point. I think it's truth. And then I would go, well, how do you feel about the Louis accusations? And people that I know knew, because I know, would be like, oh, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Louis did what? What was, I don't know. Because again, at the time, he was the biggest comedian in the world. You can't say shit about him because he's the one putting asses into seats. I would say I asked it to maybe about like 4 or 5 people before the CEO, Bo, I believe now he is the head of the Just for Laughs organization because the former one was ousted for being a sex pest. He approached me and basically like red in the face started yelling at me that he had heard what I was doing, what I was asking, and I could ask those sort of questions on my own turf, but this was their turf, and Louis was a friend of the Just for Laughs organization. And so I start sort of tearing up because at the end of the day, I'm really a comedian, and I just got yelled at by one of the heads of the biggest comedy festival in the world and threatened, basically, for just simply asking a fucking question.
I wanted to ask you about the last interview on your show, which I think was Louis C.K.
Yeah.
So from my memory, I think that was after some of the rumors about Louis C.K.'s alleged harassment of female comedians that sort of started to come out. It was just a thing circulating on the internet. I think this was after Jen Kirkman, for example, had talked about like her knowledge of Louis C.K.'s alleged harassment of female comedians.
Right.
At least people interpreted it that way. There was an article on Gawker, I believe, about it.
Right.
And I just wanted to know, I mean, if this is the first you're hearing of it, maybe my answer's already, I already got my answer that there really wasn't discussion about this on the show, but...
So wait. I'm a little lost. So the internet said Louis harassed women.
So there was first a Gawker article, and then there was a couple of tweets by people, and I know this is all internet stuff.
Pretty authoritative.
I know that this is how...
You know who you're talking to, right?
No, I totally get that, and
right.
it's a fair point that, like, internet rumors are not, court cases or anything. I just wanted to know if there was any sort of discussion about that on the show, if that was a thing on your radar.
No. I didn't see the tweets.
Louis was directly asked about these rumors in 2016 in an interview with Vulture. And so first he said, that's nothing to me, that's not real. To say that's not real, it's almost like denying the validity or personhood or standing of the person who's even brought up that concern in the first place. And then later on, he says, you can't expect every single person to like you or have a positive opinion of you, and so I'm just gonna focus on the work and not on my life. Before 2017, he started moving into a role of more of a producer in addition to being a creator in his own right.
I'm grateful to Louis for telling John Landgraf that I was funny, a lady, to do a show from a lady's perspective.
He used his power and sway in the business to get Better Things Made, which is Pamela Adlon's show. in a fascinating way, is kind of Louis's mirror image as a show. It's like the perspective of a divorced woman as opposed to a divorced man.
Good evening. Hello. I have cancer. How are you?
He was there when Tig Notaro did the legendary set where she came out and she said, I have cancer. He was like, let me put it out. He had a big platform. So like that was a way to get a lot of attention to this thing.
Louis watched your performance and he tweeted, it's the greatest stand-up I've seen that he has seen in his 27-year career, what you did that night.
Wow.
Absolutely incredible performance.
And then after that, Louis C.K. was a executive producer on One Mississippi, which is the Amazon show that Tig made based on the events that she described in that stand-up set.
We're making an animated show now with Albert Brooks. We make Pamela Adlon's show, Better Things. Zach Galifianakis' show, Baskets, that's a big hit. And Tig Notaro's show on Amazon. So we make a lot of shows.
You say, well, Louis not a studio head, but isn't he? He's a comedy head of his comedy community. That's a lot of power, because he can put friends on the show, he can not put friends on the show. People are scared that they want to be on his side for work.
My friend Tig Notaro, I was over her house and we were talking, and she's like telling me a story about Louis. And then she was kind of like, oh, by the way, have you like heard stuff about him? Like, I've heard stuff.
When we were moving towards doing the pilot is when I saw sides of him that I hadn't seen, and I shared that with other people. And that's when I started hearing stories about the behavior. I had been asked in the press what I thought, and I said he should handle it.
Hey, I'm just finishing up an email. Come on in. Oh, could you close the door, please?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thanks.
I mean, I definitely want to get out of here.
Yeah, right?
She did an episode on her show, One Mississippi, where an executive masturbates in front of a woman. People would ask her about that episode, and that's when people started to put the pieces together.
Even while these rumors are circulating and even building because there's more online attention, he's continuing to build his career. He even had this movie come to the Toronto Film Festival, which seemed to go right up to the line of addressing some of these same situations.
Please welcome Louis fucking C.K. I was there as a Hollywood Awards season reporter, and Louis was premiering this film. There was a lot of buzz about it. You know, he was a beloved character.
Hi, Daddy.
Hi. Hi, China. It starts with this teenage girl walking around in almost next to nothing, and that's his daughter, and she ends up being seduced by a 60-something-year-old man. And then there are characters in the movie pretending to masturbate. Oh, 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 God. I emerged from that screening with my jaw on the ground. I couldn't believe the movie, given it almost seemed like a defiance for him to write these scenes in. And I had a sit down with him and asked him, why did you do this? What was the purpose? And he actually said, oh, it means nothing. It's just coincidental. There are scenes in the movie of characters pretending to masturbate while these are the huge rumors circulating about me. And with an absolute straight face, we were sitting right across from each other at a not very large cafe table having this conversation.
You like looking at young girls?
Sure, who doesn't? I mean, if you had a choice between looking at a pretty girl your age or a retired bus driver, who would you choose?
I Love You, Daddy is almost explicitly about a Woody Allen type figure. It's essentially a movie about how to deal with a problematic artist by someone many would now consider to be a problematic artist.
You know, you're really cutting close to some things within the entertainment industry. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about, you know, why you wanted to tell this story. You know, it's just, I guess I like to go up to electric fences and pee on them and shit on them. I just...
Out of the blue, I get this email asking, hey, do you want to see a screening of I Love You, Daddy? And I was like, you know what? I do. It was very odd to receive this invitation. After I saw that movie, and as I was driving home, I just started crying because I thought he got away with it. Not only did he fucking get away with it, he's like rubbing it in all of our faces. No one's ever gonna fucking care about this. I just felt like as bad, perhaps even worse, than I felt at Just for Laughs because so much more time had passed after that. In 2015, I attended the Just for Laughs festival as a journalist writing on behalf of Gawker, a profoundly flawed organization I miss desperately. The organizers of the festival did not know the purpose of my presence was a desire to get to the bottom of Louis C.K.'s numerous accusations of sexual impropriety. The article where I talked about what had happened to me at JFL, I just published on my own personal website because I didn't think anyone would want to run it. And then it ended up like, you know, getting hard traction online, like people were sharing it. And so Vice reran it. I mean, I just got infinite fucking just hate from, you know, fans of him saying that I was a liar, that I was jealous, that I wasn't funny, that he should sue me for libel, etc, 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 etc. I haven't like uploaded a video of myself doing comedy really since this shit happened, just because it was such a tidal wave of hatred for these people violently disturbed by me even suggesting that their king of comedy could have done something improprietous. The argument is always, well, you know, comedy is a meritocracy, just like the entire entertainment industry, and you're just bitter because you're not as talented as my king. You know what I mean? There I stood alone, in the rain, waiting for a man who never emerged. I think what you're doing is so brave, a friend told me at the time. I'm so scared, I replied. I still am.
And just a little lesson in there for you guys. Do not call a woman crazy unless you want to see a woman go fucking crazy, okay? Just don't. Just save yourselves. If you want to tell a woman she's crazy, just call her calm. It'll just throw us off and the whole thing's dissipated. You know, just go, hey, you're being really calm right now. Oh, thank you. A psychic told me I was calm once. Thanks. What were we fighting about? I don't even know.
I was interviewed by the Village Voice, and it was this nice woman. I was like, so you've said all these conflicting things about Louis. And I was like, Louis' my friend, and I believe him. And if these women come forward, I will believe them. But they haven't, so what do you want me to say? And then New York Times calls me, and they're like, we're doing an article about Louis. It's coming out next week. I'm like, oh, good.
Listen up, creeps of Hollywood. We know who you are. Weinstein isn't the only cool Democrat lurking in film festival hotels waiting to play a jolly masturbation prank. Women talk to each other, and we talk to journalists, and we talk to lawyers. It's 2017. We don't have to put up with this shit. We are coming for you.
This was a real moment in time. Our phones were ringing off the hook, and it felt like the dam was ready to burst. And that was certainly true with the Louis C.K. story because there were these rumors, but nobody knew the truth.
It felt like something we had to cover because he's this very prominent comedian, lauded by some as this feminist. If he's done this stuff and he's denied it, we just thought, well, let's see how much of a story there is there, you know?
The story that had become an unverified legend in comedy circles took place in 2002.
Dana Goodman and Julia Wolof are comedians from Chicago. They were up and coming. They had a kind of like raucous, raunchy sort of humor. And they got a spot at the Aspen Comedy Festival, which is a big deal. After their show, they encountered Louis, and he asked them to come hang out, have a drink with him in his hotel room. And they didn't think anything of it beyond like, yeah, this guy wants to hang. Aspen's a small town. So, you know, everybody kind of like gathers in hotel bars, hotel spaces, because there's not many other places to go after the clubs close. So when they got back to his hotel room, they were still like in their coats and hats and just bundled up. And he said to them, can I take my penis out? They were like, what? No, you know, they didn't consent. They just didn't know. They thought it was a joke. They laughed it off. But then he continued, and he just got totally naked and started masturbating in front of them. And they described themselves as being just like frozen in that moment and not knowing what to do. And then when he was finished, they fled the room, and he called after them, which one is Dana and which one is Julia?
They told a lot of people what happened. They couldn't believe that it had happened.
Dave Becky was Louis' manager at the time. Word got back to him about what happened to them. Their manager had a conversation with Dave Becky, and Dana and Julia's perception of that conversation was that they were told to keep quiet. They were able to get some work when they first moved to LA, but overall, they didn't have the kind of career that you might have envisioned comedy writers who had such a hit following in Chicago and Aspen. They didn't know if they could pitch themselves to shows or projects that Dave Becky was attached to, which ended up being a lot of shows and projects, because he ended up being kind of a kingmaker in the comedy world. If you gain a reputation as somebody who's like a squeaky wheel in this world, that cuts off your career at its knees. We got the sense that there were going to be other women. We just sort of divvied up. You take this period of his career, you take this, and we just started making calls.
It's a very tricky thing we're building. You have a couple of people who are willing to go on the record and talk about it, and then you approach someone else and they say, well, who else have you talked to? And you can't say, but you can say something like, we have other women willing to go on the record. You know, imagine how exposing that is. You're just living your life. Do you want to go in the New York Times and talk about how Louis C.K. masturbated in front of you?
New York Times calls me, and they're like, do you want to be in it? And I said no, only because I thought all the victims in the article were more physical, that he actually jerked off in front of everyone. And I was like, then I'm going to get harassed for, why is she in this article? He only said something. So I was just like, please, please leave me alone. I cannot be in this. So I declined.
We eventually found 2 other women willing to go on the record, and a 5th who didn't want to.
And as we talked to people, it became really clear that there was a pattern of behavior. I think there was some confusion in the early part of this kind of reporting where you thought, is Louis just a bad flirt? Probably, but that's not what this was. You know, one of the things that helped frame my thinking around it as I was writing it, and was just, what if you worked in a bank and you were like a regional manager and you were in another office for a conference and another regional manager came up and said, can I jerk off in front of you? What? That would be horrifying to you as a professional in that context. As a last step, you go to the subject of the story and you say, these are the allegations we have against you. What can you respond?
For Louis, one of the incidents of sexual misconduct involves 2 comedians, Dana Min Goodman and Julia Wolof, who told us that you invited them back to your hotel room, asked if you could take out your penis, then take off your clothes and masturbate in front of them. How do you respond to this? Rebecca Corey told us that in 2005, while she was appearing in a TV pilot with you, you asked if you could masturbate in front of her. How do you respond? Abby Shackner said that in a 2003 phone conversation, she could clearly hear you masturbating as the 2 of you spoke. How do you respond? At the Chris Rock show, a female coworker said that you masturbated in front of her in your office on a workday while colleagues were on the other side of the door. How do you respond? The women we spoke to say that you have put them in an untenable situation, that they felt used by someone they saw as a gifted comic and a major figure in their field. Tig Notaro suspects that you released her album to shore up your reputation and distract from rumors about these incidents. What is your response to that? And we never got a reply. We then heard that he canceled his appearance on Colbert and that the movie's premiere was canceled.
I knew some of the names, but not all. The fact that this is in print solidifies something. It makes it part of the public record. You can't say you don't know anymore.
For his entire career, he kept it quiet. And how many rumors were there about him? He got caught, the man got caught.
What's nearly unique about the Louis C.K. story is that there is no factual dispute at the heart of this story.
About a day after it was published, he put out a statement that said, these stories are true.
He didn't use the word sorry, but he wrote a whole essay explaining that he knew he did something wrong.
And he talked a lot about his own power and how he abused the power that he had.
Good apology is you acknowledge in the apology what you're actually apologizing for. Like, what are you truly saying you're sorry you have done? I think the short statement that he offered did some version of that. But I mean, it's a process, atonement, right?
Specifically what he says is, I'm just gonna take the time to go away and listen.
I didn't know.
Right.
What if I did?
Okay.
That's the thing that bothers me. What if I did? What if I had known one of the women who was making the accusations? And I don't. I know they're in the comedy world, but I had not heard of them. But let's say I did, and one of them came to me and said, 10 years ago or whatever, Louis did this.
What would you have done?
Would I still have worked with him? Would I still greet him? Like, that's the part.
You can't answer that question.
I can't honestly answer, and that makes me feel shitty.
When the actual story broke, and it was not just that story, but like boom, 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 I was like, well, the fact that I thought it wasn't my problem is the problem. Like, that's exactly the problem, is that everybody was treating this like it wasn't their problem. And it takes like years of investigative journalism and the courage of dozens of women to step forward at the risk of their own sanity, health, safety, and careers in order to make it not a problem anymore. Well, shit. Like, that is my problem.
They try to kill Louis C.K. They won't stop till that man is dead. They're trying to kill Louis C.K., you know? Who would have thought in 2018 I would be the most powerful Louis in comedy? What did Louis C.K. really do? What did he do? He jerked off in front of a few women, right? Yeah. Who hasn't?
For some of the women in the Louis story, the comedy community did not go to bat for them in the way that they might have hoped.
I mean, there's just this litany of things that are way worse than whacking off in front of people, which is not cool either, of course.
If we're gonna grade it on a scale of this to drugging and raping 60 women, I guess if we must measure things that way, yes, this is less bad. I don't know.
If nothing else, if you can find no compassion for him, which I think you should, think about how his daughters, who hear all of this stuff, feel. Why don't you leave him alone for them if you're so women empowering?
People saying, what's the big deal? You're masturbating in front of you. You know, why didn't you just leave the hotel room? Like, people questioning their experience over and over and saying, you're making a mountain out of a molehill.
If you don't run out the room and go, excuse me, you don't talk to me that, you don't do that to me, excuse me, and leave. But you stayed around because you're like, well, I thought maybe he was gonna give me a writing job. Well, you ain't nothing but a hoe.
If something horrible has happened to you, why should it continue to hurt you when you bring it to light, you know? That to me is kind of the more interesting question and almost the more important one.
One lady said, Louis C.K. masturbating in front of me ruined my comedy dreams. Word.
I got a phone call, it was the beginning of the new year. Apparently Dave Chappelle came out with a special and he brought up the Louis stuff. You know, people were watching the special and then they know that he's talking about me.
Louis C.K. was masturbating while I was on the phone with him. Bitch, you don't know how to hang up a phone?
I became the joke. To a certain extent, I felt like he wasn't talking about me because he got it wrong. Like, I didn't say what he thought I said. I think he took the spin out of Judd Apatow, the dream killer tweet, and that's what he took from. And then I think later on became a Martin Luther King having a dream, you know, like, don't have a dream.
Well, then I dare say, madam, you may have never had a dream. Come on, man, that's a brittle spirit. That is a brittle ass spirit, nigga. That shit is too much. She's a grown ass woman.
I don't know. I think initially I was pissed because, I mean, I remember when he was offered $50 million or whatever, and he didn't take, you know, people had thoughts about that and he lost his mind or for whatever reason. I felt empathy towards him for that because I thought if you're a creative person and you're giving that would be very difficult. But years later, Dave can say it's completely something different. I just don't think he understands that things are situational. It's not black and white.
Hello, police. Yes, I am on the other line with comedian Louis C.K., and I think that he is masturbating while I'm on the phone. You know what the police are gonna say in Atlanta? Well, what are you guys talking about?
It does bother me that, like, I'm not gonna live this down. Like, this is gonna be, like, in my fucking obituary. And it bothers me that this is, like, the biggest, you know, this is, like, my thing. Like, I haven't, like, surpassed this, you know? I don't know what else will be mentioned, you know, besides that. It's like... Hey, Giant, what? Come here. Yeah, I'm an artist. You know I love children's poems, and I always wanted to create for children. And for a while, I was writing young adult books. I think creating is part of my nature. I think performing is definitely more of a challenge. Let's see here. No. Bob, I'm looking for, they want to see embarrassing things to see that I was, to validate me that I was once, they want, I don't know what they want. They want me to find, I hosted a children's show at one point in time. Water is all around you. You drink it, you swim in it, and if you had to live without it, you'd be like a fish out of... Well, that is today's topic on Up and Running. Let's see, I think it might be in here. Yes, this is a bunch of stuff. Sorry. Yeah, so there's this stuff. Oh, my first thing I ever did, a body piece. That was in college, 4/16/93. I think I always loved comedy, just needing to express myself. After school, I went to Chicago because I saw a book about improvising, and I started studying in Chicago. Second City is like a comedic institution. It's where all these wonderful people have come from, you know? Gilda Radner, Joan Rivers, Tina, Amy Poehler. I think I auditioned for it and I didn't get it, and then I auditioned for it and I rolled around like a meatball and I got it. I performed for 2 years with Second City. I think it was Adam McKay or someone I admired said, "Don't lose your voice," and I got really scared. I said, "What's my voice? What's my voice?" I always thought of myself as more of a writer and creator, more than a performer.
From the ABC Broadcast Center in New York, it's the Pepsi Stuff Dana Carvey Show.
Can I help you?
2 tickets for Advance Highway. Yeah, two tickets.
$16.
The first time I found out about the writing gig for the Dana Carvey Show was via my boyfriend at the time, John. And he told me about that there was a thing that they're looking for writers. I wrote up a little packet in my closet and I sent it to Brillstein Gray, my boyfriend. He went for an interview with Robert Smigel and my stuff was on the top of his desk. And that was just kind of exciting and enough. But then a few days later, I got a phone call from Louis C.K., Louis, to submit more writing. I don't hear back, but John gets the job. And then I went to visit, and I know one day we ate with Louis and his wife at the time. And then I ran into him for like a UCB thing. They were doing something, and I was helping them. And he seemed happy to see me, you know, because he remembered something that I sent in that second writing sample that he liked. So it was always nice when someone comment, you know, they remember that thing. Well, I moved to California. Then I run into him again the end of 2002 or the beginning of 2003. And he gave me his information at where he was working or his phone number to get in contact with him or whatnot. But I guess I created the show because it was kind of who I was afraid I was going to be and who I think I am. I called him up because I wanted him to come to this show because hey, I just created my first solo show since I've been out here, and this is something that I do, and why not show what I've been working on? And he started telling me very early on, it veered very quickly. I didn't even get to say why I was calling or whatever. And then he started talking about my picture, that he remembered that, you know, John had it when he worked on the show, and that some of the things that I made John, and he was commenting, and then it just started, that was beginning to turn, where he was talking about what turns him on, but it came in through how cute I was, and it just started getting into fantasy. It just started getting inappropriate, yet I thought that I was being hazed. And I felt like at one point he turned his blinds. I don't even know why. There was something that happened, because I'm only hearing.
Are you supposed to be like, wait, are you masturbating? Like, that's a weird thing to say to someone you don't know.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
If someone says, can I masturbate in front of you?
Well, he didn't ask me. He didn't ask me. He just started doing it. But when I brought up the show, I remember he kind of quickly skedaddled, like, hey, I'll see, I'll be really busy. And I said, and this was what bothered me one of the most, is that I said, this isn't gonna be the last time we talk, is it? And that was the part that felt extremely vulnerable to me, that it just sounds weird. It seemed weird even then. It's like, I just felt duped. When I got off the phone, I called up my friend, Stu. He brought up Dana and Julie, and I didn't know. And I said, why didn't you tell me? And he thought I knew, and we still fight about it sometimes. Like when the article came out, I said, why didn't you tell me? If I would have known, I wouldn't have been in that situation. I would have known that I was, you know, being duped. It was one of those times, you know, where things in life happen and various things happen kind of in a sequential order that just kind of knock at your worth. I moved back to Chicago for a short time after that. My dad had just died, and I was a bit broken. So I hid for a couple years. I'm a hider. I think it was like 2009, I got a Facebook message from Louis saying, I think, you know, the last time we talked, it was weird. I said, yes, it was weird. I don't know if he apologized. He just mentioned weirdness. And then, am I gonna be around? And I met him at Cantor's. And the first thing I said is, do you have a problem? Because, you know, when I got off the phone, I learned about 2 other people. I said, do you have a problem? And he said, no. And he told me his sob story about, you know, what happened to him at Aspen. And he told me his perspective, which was, you know, he felt like everybody made fun of him, whatever. He made himself the victim in that dynamic. Although when I left him that day, I said, your children will always love you. I said, no matter what, you know, happens, your children will always love you. Because my dad didn't do the most wonderful things, and, like, I still love him. So, like, that's why, you know, people don't always follow, you know, they don't always follow the path of the norm. But, you know, it doesn't justify hurting people or making people, you know.
I was at Whole Foods. I picked up an eggplant, and this dude looked at me and did me like this. I was like, I do not expect that shit at Whole Foods. That is some Trader Joe's shit. I did not pay $13 for some grapes to get sexually assaulted, asshole. I'm at the cellar one day, and someone starts talking to me, and he said, hey, I wanted to ask you about the Louis thing. It was very matter of fact, like, do you think he's gonna come back? Yeah, of course I do. My reality is, usually white men get away with the stuff that they do, because if they didn't, we wouldn't be where we are today, right? And that was appalling to some people. And I'm like, well, what world do you live in? Do you think that they're gonna put him on a boat and send him to an island and stone him? Like, what the hell what society have you been living in? Why am I the only one that is, you know, subject to reality? Like, you know he's coming back, right?
Louis'
quiet period lasted about 9 months, and then he suddenly made an unannounced drop-in at the Comedy Cellar. The Cellar is like this locus of the comedy world in Manhattan. You know, it's the place where you can see an up-and-coming act and Chris Rock on the same night. It's a comedian's hangout. People talk about making it at the Cellar, like if you get past the booker, that is considered the gold standard of stand-up comedy.
I knew at some point I'm gonna have a predicament, because I just knew he would want to come back, and it would be here that he'd want to come back. And then the shit hit the fan. It was nuts.
Uncomfortable, disgusting, and frustrating. That's how two women in attendance described the atmosphere during Louis C.K.'s surprise stand-up comedy set.
One audience member called the club to object to the surprise set.
When, if ever, is it appropriate for people accused of sexual misconduct to try and make a comeback?
A social media firestorm.
It seems I missed the part when Louis C.K. served time.
He could have waited 2 years and he still would have been okay.
Donate to the Me Too movement. Go spend your time with women that have been crime victims.
And when somebody like Louis C.K. comes out, he's changing the rules, he's testing the waters, and he's saying, I'm ready to come back.
Everybody I know knows people who've done things they should be ashamed of. Everybody. Normally in a moral world, we forgive the people who apologize and admit that they did something wrong.
What's the criteria people have to meet to go on your stage? And
No,
it sounds...
no, I don't have a standard. Right now, it's a case-by-case basis, and I can't imagine every situation that might come before me. I don't mind living and dying based on what the audience feels, but the people who are saying that Louis shall not work, they need to be questioned more closely as to where they draw the line. What's their worldview? What are their standards? How much evidence do they think is enough? How long is enough? How long should somebody go without working? What should they do when they're not working? Should they become wards of the state? Can they do some jobs but not other jobs? Is it okay for Walmart to hire Louis? Or is he so radioactive that nobody shall hire him? These are the tough questions.
These decisions have meaning whether we like it or not, whether you like it or not. The decision to have Louis C.K. on stage, it has meaning. And how much you and the rest of us have to come to terms with that.
You can feel whatever you want about these things, but the idea that you have the right to impose on a private business who's employing a free person to perform in front of people who want to see him in a free country, that you feel that this is your business, I think that's very, very dangerous. And that is where I was really drawing my line.
People were tweeting me demanding that I didn't perform at the Cellar because Louis was performing there. I was like, how awesome for you to be able to make me the bad guy. And how often does that happen when you try to make women responsible for the behaviors of men?
Why can't we just let Louis go back to writing jokes about how men are the gravest threat to the safety of women? But he doesn't just write jokes, he walks the walk. And I think that is to be commended. He's a performance artist.
So he steps back for 9 months or whatever it was, and people are saying, that's not long enough. You didn't do anything. Like, you gotta... So what should someone do?
I wrote a tweet thread. It started by me going, I know I'll take some heat for this, but I feel like this is a conversation that needs to happen. There's gonna be other men who experience these problems, and what is the path forward for them? Louis right now on the vanguard of this, and I think I said, I'm excited to see how he does it. The pushback that I got from that immediately was overwhelming. And I felt horrible. And I was like, I'm not defending Louis' actions. I'm having in public a conversation that I feel like men are having in private, and women are having in private all over this country, and saying, how do we deal with this? How do we deal with this? How do we welcome people back or not welcome people back? I apologized, and what I apologized for was not acknowledging the pain around Louis is real for people. And there's obviously hypocrisy coming from Louis himself.
Like, I lost so much fucking money in a day. In one day, I lost, I'm not gonna tell you how much, but it was millions and millions of dollars. It was 35 million. I don't give a fuck. Fuck it. I'll tell you I lost $35 million. You don't tell people you have $35 million, but you can tell them you lost $35 million because that shit is hilarious. That's fucking funny.
He started to do more touring, and they started to sell out.
I just love comedy. I saw Louis C.K. in Toronto last week. Oh yeah, I heard about that show. It came out of nowhere. How was that? There were protesters outside. It was fucking wild. Seriously? Yeah. Oh, fuck all that. He talked about the jerking off thing for like 30 minutes. It was hilarious. Yeah, don't spoil it because I really want to see when it's finished. It was really funny though. He's probably gonna release like an hour set. Oh yeah, pretty soon. It's gonna be the biggest comeback. He's super dope, man.
All right. How was your last couple of years? How was 2018 and 19 for you guys? Anybody else get in global amounts of trouble? Anybody else?
I was sort of seduced into thinking that he could take a thing that he knew as an artist he was doing as a person and use that in the art in some way to create his own reckoning with his behavior.
All right, you want to talk about it? Should we talk about it? All right. I don't mind talking about it. If you ever ask somebody, may I jerk off in front of you? And they say yes. Just say, are you sure? That's the first part. And then if they say yes, just don't fucking do it. Just don't do it.
Wait, what? It was different than what his apology was. He framed it as a kink. You can't be the smart guy comic and be this stupid. You don't get both.
You all have your thing. I don't know what your thing is. You're so fucking lucky that I don't know what your thing is. Because everybody knows my thing. Everybody knows my fucking thing now. Obama knows my thing. Do you understand how that feels?
He never talked about the repercussions for the women, but he talked a lot about the repercussions for himself. Now the whole world knows my weird sexual hang-up.
I like jerking off. I don't like being alone. That's all I can tell you. I get lonely. Where is everyone? It's just sad. I like company. I like to share. I'm good at it, too. If you're good at juggling, you wouldn't do it alone in the dark. You would gather folks and amaze them. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that shit.
I think it was kind of like an emperor has no clothes sort of situation. He came back, he learned nothing. He didn't say anything profound about the experience.
There is this defensiveness around, in some cases, to it now, right? What he will not be addressing. I don't know if that's his best mode. It's the opposite of what made him famous and what made him a great comedian.
You know, Louis had a whole bit about how the greatest threat to women is men, you know? Louis could still do that bit and say, and I was one of those guys. And let me talk about it. And it feels like such a missed opportunity that he didn't do it.
For all the times he was willing to tell us everything about who he was and tell us about his foibles, there was still this one part of himself that he was holding back. And, you know, that goes back to the discussion of, is a comedian just a joke teller or are they a truth teller? Are the jokes supposed to be the truth or are the jokes just jokes?
He called his next special sorry. It's just such a big middle finger, you know? And it's like, who are you really giving that middle finger to? You're pissed at all the people who got mad at you for jerking off in front of people? Like, why? Why are you mad at them?
Michael Jackson, wonderful music. Blessed us with wonderful music. Did some other things too. What's worse? A pedophile who makes beautiful music or one that doesn't? This is the choices. No pedophiles is not on the menu.
We simultaneously want too much of our artists, but they also want too much from us in some ways. They want to be thought of only
as these people who make things, even though the thing they make is entirely predicated on what people they are, what kind of person they are.
Sorry was like, you just see a man that's like 0 fucks given. Do you feel like, because of what you've endured, you transcended giving a fuck?
This is the way I look at my life before, was that I just didn't think there was danger in the world somehow. So now I do, and that's changed me a little bit. So that's opposite of like no fucks given, in a sense. But that's more about the way I live my life and the way I plan my life now. But on stage, that's holy. That's a holy place for me. And I do think I got that back.
I love that you've made this return, and then, you know, you experienced a bunch of resistance, but now it's kind of gone. You know, and
yeah, might just keep doing it. Just keep doing it.
Yeah, and now you're doing shit that's really being recognized. Like, you won a fucking Emmy.
Yeah, I got a Grammy. I got a Grammy since I came back. Yeah, that was nice. It's nice.
Did the Grammys snub the cancel culture club?
It is ironic that the term cancel culture, which is reductive and stupid and misused, is applied to a lot of people who have flourishing careers. Like, these people are like, they're all fine.
Louis won the Grammy for Best Comedy Album, and that album was the album he did where he's like, I asked everyone's consent, and they said yes, and I was like, what are the fucking odds, you know?
I believe he won the Grammy Award because it's a secret ballot. There is no way that the people who voted for him to win that Grammy would have done so if it was going to be reported in the papers, their names as having voted for Louis C.K.
How did that Grammy feel?
It was nice. You know, when I used to win awards, I just found it awkward. I didn't really care about it, but this one was very nice.
I bet.
Didn't Dave Chappelle win awards for calling one of Louis C.K.'s accusers a burlesque spirit? Making fun of the victims is still good for business.
Thank you for coming tonight to the world premiere of 4th of July. Enjoy the movie. Hang out for the talk afterwards. I hope you like it. Thank you very much for coming. Good night!
I think it is somewhat unprecedented just how much he has been able to restore elements of his pre-2017 success. I don't think he was intentionally trying to cancel-proof himself when he was distributing his own stand-up specials or self-financing his own TV series. But it's been fascinating to watch the culture kind of catch up with that.
Louis C.K., go get everything he has.
LouisCK.com. Go to my website, otherwise I can't do this anymore.
LouisCK.com.
No other stream of income except my own industry.
You know, Louis is not on The Tonight Show. He's not on TV and Netflix. He created his own thing outside of the business. The people who love Louis C.K. are still there.
I have never asked anyone to denounce him, say he shouldn't work. I've just said, when you see women that are hurting and feel like they're crazy because everyone letting all these predators back while some people never had a chance, it really hurts, especially in this culture where it just seems like nobody cares.
Ladies and gentlemen, Louis C.K.
For all the fans he's lost, he's able to gain these new ones who don't care. Maybe they never cared. But now they see him as someone who's waving the banner for people who don't care.
You're doing Madison Square Garden in the round.
Yeah, so I'm doing it on January 28th, and I'm going to live stream it on my website. It's also expensive. It's an expensive place.
Renting it is about $400,000?
Something like that, yeah, I forget.
To just rent it before.
Yeah, it's astronomical. But they know they got you, because you want to play the garden.
You're going to play the garden.
I mean, he's back, you know, and like, we all make mistakes.
You know what? I don't mind, whatever. You know, I'm more or less like looking more to give someone a second chance.
I feel kind of mad at him because I think it took away from what he could have accomplished as far as his television shows. He had movies that were coming out where he could have been iconic. I'm glad he came back, just as he should have. There's no reason why, you know, he should have stayed quiet. No reason why he should have just disappeared forever.
I'm very glad you're here. I'm really grateful. I know that it's not easy being my fan these days. I know that all of you have one person who doesn't know you're here.
Is that one person?
You know, I think everybody lives with a certain amount of hypocrisy, and this is the amount that I've allocated for myself.
We all have to draw a line. This is one of my favorite things that John Oliver says. People will often say, where do you draw the line? Can't listen to R. Kelly, we can't do this, we can't do that. Where do you draw the line? Somewhere. You draw it somewhere. You have to draw it somewhere. Like, you can't have no line. And maybe tomorrow, I will get a new piece of information, and I will have to erase that line, and I will have to draw it somewhere else.
This sort of ability to speculate about what all could have happened to the many, 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 many people who have suffered at the hands of these men is long, and the longer you think about it, the harder it is to really care what art these men make. Because there's a whole bunch of artists who didn't get to do anything as a result of either the incident having happened and they've got a lot of PTSD over it, or they were literally not hired because they were prevented from getting jobs.
Cancel culture for me was all a ruse. You know, like homophobia, transphobia, racism, misogyny, none of it went away. It's still here today, right? People are making money, money, money right now doing it. So what's the cancel culture? Tell me what happened.
So since I gave up on the entertainment industry, I pretty much only make money selling garbage on eBay. And by garbage, I mean like shit people don't want. If you want to make money on eBay and you want to do it fast, Spanx. Because as long as women are, you know, capable of self-loathing, which will be until Earth ends, they're buying Spanx left and right all day, every fucking day, dude.
It's hard to draw a line, and I think that's what makes it easy for people to be like, well, I'm not doing anything bad, and this person's not doing anything bad, but then to kind of like stop there. And I think Meg is someone that's so moral she won't work with anyone. Meg has so much integrity, she hasn't worked in a year.
At the end of the day, like, I don't want to participate with the sort of people who are willing to just blindly ignore their morality. So that's why I sell shit on eBay for a living and occasionally do comedy when people will let me. Because I refuse to fucking participate in this shit.
This is my quick story about the wonderful time that the very thoughtful Louis C.K. asked my consent. I get emotional thinking about it because it was so sweet of him. When you say anything as a woman, it is the scarlet letter, right? It just becomes who I am, no matter how hard I try to fight it. And what I'm told is, then you shouldn't have said it, right? And so it's like, I thought that could just be like one part of me. Like, I do this, I do that. Sometimes I might tell everyone if someone tried to show me their dick, then I do this, then I do that, then I do this. Someone else tried to show me their dick, I might mention it, but you know, I'm a well-rounded person. And I'm talking about this literally almost 20 years later. Why am I talking about it? I don't fucking know. I literally be happy if I never thought about it again. But I guess because culturally something hasn't changed. So, okay, here I go with my story again. But I always put it this way. For women in comedy, there's always a threat of rain, so we carry an umbrella everywhere. And for men, they just get to walk out the door and assume it's gonna be sunny. We always have to think of something. We always have to be aware that the men that work with us might be trying to get something out of us. It just changes things enough that it taints your experience. I said taint, that's why I stopped.
I don't regret doing it. At least I've gotten to that point. People were coming forward to let people know who people are dealing with and not keep it quiet and put other people in those situations was, for me, why you did it. But it's bigger than you imagine. It's loud, it's hard, and you just have to manage after that however best you can. After the Louis article came out and Chappelle made fun of me, I thought, ooh, I need to start expressing myself. I need a voice, and I can't do this with solo shows. And so I started doing stand-up in 2018. And the same stuff that can take you down can be the same stuff that's a rise for the next thing. Wow, can you believe it? It's March 4th! March 4th! And Dave, I feel like I would say something if I saw him. You know, I'd like to say, I'm the person that you made a comment about. I'm the brittle ass spirit.